Hi, my name's Danielle. I'm an occupational therapist at Helping Hand Center. This is video 4 of 4 of our parent handwriting series. And this video looks a little bit different than previous videos. Our previous videos, 1 through 3, were geared more towards early handwriters, kids who were just starting to learn their letters. Whereas this video is a little bit shorter and it's geared towards cursive writers. So these are our kiddos who are in 3rd grade or above, or who are age 8, around that age or above, who are learning cursive or whose parents want to help them fine-tune their cursive. So it's going to look a little bit different and it's going to be much shorter. So I'm going to share my screen here so we can check out the PowerPoint. All right, so like I said, this is our cursive group. And today we're just going to be focusing on cursive letters. So this is a much shorter group than past group. So most schools begin teaching cursive when children are in the 3rd grade. So this is typically when kiddos are around the age of 8. At this level, kiddos have, mastered the skills that they need to control the pencil. So all those gross motor and fine motor skills are there so that they're stabilized and they're stabilized at the table and they're able to manipulate the pencil in such a fine, precise way that they're able to do the more complex strokes that are required for cursive writing. And kiddos typically have a very solid foundation of printing handwriting by the time they're in the 3rd grade. So that just kind of feeds into learning cursive. So kiddos are typically ready by the age of 8. And then schools actually, our Illinois lawmakers actually mandated that schools beginning in the 2018-2019 school year begin teaching cursive in the curriculum. It was there for a while. I know when I was a kiddo, cursive was required to be taught in schools. And then in more recent years, many schools went away from teaching cursive, but even more recently, Illinois lawmakers have made it a requirement that schools teach at least 1 unit of cursive, so kiddos are able to at least have the basics, understand it. A lot of people writing cursive, it's considered, the more formal way of addressing things. So a lot of kiddos will have to read cursive at some point. And by teaching in the schools, they have that foundation to do so. And then of course, signatures and everything are in cursive. So it gives them those foundational skills. Move on to why learning cursive is important. There's a lot of research on why cursive is important, which is why lawmakers ultimately made it so that at least 1 unit of cursive is taught in our schools. There are studies showing that people think structurally, so therefore the continuous fashion of cursive, opposed to like printing black letters, promotes better understanding of complete words. It helps us focus on content because cursive flows. It's so much faster. Anybody who's written in cursive knows that as you're writing, you can just go ahead and very quickly write those letters because everything flows together. The words are connected. There's not those short pauses or breaks as you're lifting up your pencil. So it leads to greater thought process on the content and less on the structure of the words when we're writing. Cursive activates different parts of the brain. It's more selective brain engagement, or it allows for more selective brain engagement to occur when writing notes during a class lecture versus typing them. So this bullet point here, the researchers found that there's actually 60% greater retention when students write their notes versus typing. So this also applies to print. So both cursive and print, students are better able to retain what is being said in a lecture if they're writing their notes. So cursive, knowing that it allows for faster writing and more focus on content, we can assume that cursive will help the student even further, but the study was more so focused on retention based on handwriting versus typing. Cursive can be used as a developmental tool to help fine-tune fine motor precision skills. If we have an older kiddo who, they're working on fine motor, they're struggling a little bit with it, cursive can be used even in an intervention form to just work on those precision skills. When you're, as a parent, working on fine motor and precision at home, cursive can be a way to really help kiddos just focus on their fine motor and precision in just a different way, and it's very functional because it's writing. It's something kiddos need to do all the time. Improves writing speed, we kind of already touched on that, and helps children be better cursive readers. So again, cursive pops up in a lot of different places, specifically in more formal settings. So teaching kiddos cursive as a form of writing helps them become better cursive readers. And I know when I was a kid or student, I had a teacher who would write all the notes on the chalkboard in cursive. So luckily I had that foundation of knowing cursive so I could read it. But I know a lot of my classmates, and this was actually in college, a lot of my classmates, they weren't as familiar with cursive for whatever reason, and they really struggled with reading the notes off the chalkboard. And then people who write their letters must focus on thinking of the word as a single unit, which can lead to better spelling abilities long-term, opposed to people who continuously type their notes. So again, this is referring to both cursive and printing, but people who are writing their letters versus typing, the research shows that they end up being better spellers in the long run. So having that handwritten knowledge and cursive being one of those things that we can use when we're writing out notes and stuff in the classroom just leads to better spelling long term. So cursive is important. How to teach cursive. So the research suggests that 10 minutes of guided practice per day is what is needed to learn cursive. Basic handwriting skills have been developed and fine-tuned through print. So basically less time is needed to address cursive because those basic skills are already there. And then there's just so many similarities between cursive and print letters. So again, less time is required. It's not something that needs to be, a whole lesson is devoted to it during the day or anything like that in our schools. And then when you're practicing at home, just those 10 quick minutes, just getting the basics down and the fundamentals. And then, so there's, for cursive writing, there's slanted letters where the letters are on that slant. And then there's also those block styles, vertical letter. Vertical letter formation, the more block style, is easier to learn. It's okay if children naturally develop a slant. Of course, when they're reading it, a lot of times there's a slant to it, so they might just naturally develop it. But we shouldn't focus on, the letters are wrong because they're not slanted. Whatever's easiest for the child to learn should be the approach that's taken. I typically teach the block style, that vertical letter formation. Handwriting Without Tears follows that. So as you guys know from past videos, I use a lot of the Handwriting Without Tears curriculum when I'm teaching handwriting. So I do find that kiddos do have an easier time learning the vertical letter formation. But again, if kiddos develop a slant, it's not a bad thing. It's just not something that has to be there. How to navigate the progression of letters. Start with lowercase letters. So this is actually different than when we're talking about learning printing letters. You start with the capitals because they're big, bold, familiar, and they have that common starting space. But for cursive, the lowercase letters are actually more familiar than the uppercase letters. So we like to start with the lowercase letters because they closely resemble print. And they also have similar starting points. So we want to kind of group our letters that have those similar starting points when teaching the letters together. So again, just like previous videos, we were talking about how we don't necessarily go in alphabetical order when teaching letters. Same with cursive. We're focusing on starting point because that helps with developmental sequencing, and it just helps with the repetition of learning. If we're practicing letters that all start in the same spot, we're more likely to learn that starting point, and starting point's important so that we get letter formation down. So like C, A, D start in the same spot with cursive, U, Y, L, and J, and then K, R, and S, they can all be grouped together because they have those similar starting points. And then we finish teaching capitals just because they're harder to learn. They don't build off of printing the same way the lowercase letters do. Tips to teaching: present both cursive and print examples and visuals together. Research shows that encoding occurs best when both examples are presented at once. So if you have a sentence or letters for the kiddos to practice, having the print version on top, cursive right below that, and then lines for them to practice underneath is really what the research suggests. It helps for better encoding of letters to have both of those visuals right there for the kids to see. And Handwriting Without Tears, I use them a lot, the Learning Without Tears program, to just kind of structure my treatment sessions and structure what I am telling parents and resources that I'm giving parents. So they have a 10-minute cursive success webinar on their website, which is free. You put in your email and your name, and they'll send you a link to this webinar. And it's only 10 minutes, and it's really great as far as just giving you the more information on cursive writing and how to help your kids best succeed with cursive. So I highly suggest checking that out. It's a great resource. So that is the end of today's Group 4 cursive video. And this is actually the end of our parent handwriting series. So my information is there, including my email address. So if you have any specific questions or want to know where I got a piece of information or anything like that, feel free to reach out. But otherwise, this series has been a lot of fun to make, and I hope you enjoyed it as well.